Yes, my raps are filled with rage.
One of these days, we gotta bust back for the homies.
You have to be logical. You know, if I know that in this hotel room they have food every day, and I'm knocking on the door every day to eat, and they open the door, let me see the party, let me see like them throwing salami all over I mean, just like throwing food around. But they're telling me there's no food in here. You know what I'm saying? Every day. I'm standing outside trying to sing my way in. You know what I'm saying? We are hungry, please let us in. We are hungry, please let us in. After about a week, that song is going to change to we hungry, we need some food. After 2-3 weeks, it's like, you know, give me all the food, breaking out the door. And after a year, you just like, you know what I'm saying? I'm picking the lock, coming through the door, blasting, you know what I'm saying? It's like you hungry, you reached your level, you don't want any more. We asked 10 years ago. We was asking with the Panthers. We was asking with them, you know, with civil rights movement. We was asking, you know. Now those people that were asking, they're all dead and in jail. So now what do you think we're going to do? Ask?
What up, y'all? We are back for another night of the Masked Up community live stream. I want to give a big shout out to our partners at Protect Us. And y'all, it is still Black History Month. Of course, that was famed poet rapper Tupac Shakur we opened the show with, and that is the kind of energy we are bringing all night for the last Masked Up of Black History Month. And speaking of those who make Black history, we got a couple powerful and unapologetic thought leaders joining us tonight on the show. We have Dr. Julian Watkins and artist, media mogul Kamon Freeman. Yeah, y'all, it's an exciting night here on the show. The Rona's on the way down. White supremacy is being called out and dismantled, and we are going to teach you how to argue like a professional. Let's get into it. First things first, y'all. It's time for the Rona update. So, y'all, the Rona news tonight comes to us from Michael Mago at the Sacramento Bee. All of California's coronavirus metrics continue to rapidly trend downward as the state recovers from what officials hope is the final major surge of the pandemic. Give it up. Since peaking in the first 2 weeks of 2021 at an average of nearly 41,000 new COVID-19 cases per day, the state's case rate has whittled down to just over 8,500 a day in the past 2 weeks, California Department of Public Health data shows. Test positivity is at 3.8%, down from a high of 14% in early January, for California's lowest percentage since November 10th. We are back doing pre-Thanksgiving numbers, y'all. The number of patients hospitalized with confirmed virus cases has plummeted from almost 22,000 in early January to about 7,500 as of Friday's update from CDPH. The total in intensive care units has dropped from nearly 4,900 to about 2,200 in the same stretch. And fatalities, always the last indicator to decrease, are declining as well. The 2-week daily death rate fell from 542 to 380 in less than 3 weeks, according to CDPH. The state's mass vaccination campaign has shown signs of accelerating in recent weeks, with CDPH now reporting a total of nearly 7 million doses injected of the 8.8 million delivered. And y'all are asking, when are businesses going to return? Well, Governor Newsom has been talking about it. All that is required is a 1-week test positivity rate below 8% and a daily average of fewer than 7 cases per 100,000 residents. We are halfway there, y'all. California has like 52 counties. 40 of them still had at least 14 daily cases per 100,000. That's more than double that second requirement. So we still got some work to do, but we are on a good trajectory, y'all. And I am really, really proud of us. You know what I'm saying? Man, that's the Rona update for the week. And, I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to report some good news on the Rona side of things. And, let's get into the latest health news, y'all. In this here segment, we scour the journals and cover the latest health studies from around the globe that you might not have heard of. For example, last week, news sources reported that more than 80% of Alabama's Black population lived in a county where life expectancy didn't meet vaccine eligibility, i.e., before Monday, only frontline essential workers, long-term care residents and staff, and people 75 and older were eligible to receive the COVID-19 vaccine in Alabama. Yet, in 47 of the state's 67 counties, life expectancy among Black people is less than the required 75 years to be vaccine eligible. That's according to data from county health rankings. Life expectancy for white people in Alabama, however, is less than 75 years in only 25 counties. So 25 counties in comparison to 47 is almost half as much, y'all. Then this Thursday, this report came out in USA Today that the U.S. lost a whole year of life expectancy, and for Black people, it's nearly 3 times worse. This is a snapshot of some of the science that proves just one of the ways systemic racism is affecting our Black family on an everyday basis in America, and Alabama is not alone. We can't say we live in an equal or just society when statistics like this prove otherwise. Black elders weren't living long enough to qualify for the vaccine if they wanted it before, and now they're expected to live 3 years less due to the trauma of the pandemic. What do we have to do to get the vaccine right? I mean, if only someone would find what we have to do to get the vaccine right. This comes to us, obviously, shout out to Netta. This is Netta Found. This is one of my favorite segments of the show. And this week, Netta found this. This is an article from Dr. Julian Watkins from statnews.com. To get the COVID-19 vaccine right, we must close the confidence gap and stop pathologizing communities of color. Says broad skepticism about the safety and effectiveness of potential COVID-19 vaccines has created major challenges for policymakers and health officials as they develop vaccine programs. Much of this has been attributed to the anti-vaccine movement and the constant attacks on science by the outgoing presidential administration. When discussions focus on skepticism in communities of color, particularly the Black community, the conversation tends to center around the argument that their distrust is rooted in history and a collective memory of racist policies such as Tuskegee and early 20th century forced sterilization policies. This line of thinking is harmful. By focusing on historic wounds, we lose sight of the bigger picture and stifle necessary conversation. Dr. Watkins goes on to say, health and healthcare disparities are crushing communities of color in this country. Healthcare systems and their practitioners play a significant part in this. Relative to white people, Black people are less likely to have their pain adequately treated. Black and Indigenous women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth than white women, regardless of education or socioeconomic factors. Dr. Watkins says, at current rates of HIV transmission in the U.S., the lifetime risk for infection for Black, gay, and bisexual men is 1 in 2. Compare that with 1 in 4 for Latinx, Hispanic, gay, and bisexual men, and 1 in 11 for white, gay, and bisexual men. Dr. Watkins writes that systemic marginalization has measurable consequences and palpable outcomes. Y'all, That's a bar. Systemic marginalization has measurable consequences and palpable outcomes. To meaningfully address the public health crisis of racism, a pandemic of racialized trauma, institutions need to improve and innovate their approaches through ongoing evaluation, research, and continuous quality improvement. This will require a paradigm shift on both personal and institutional levels. AKA, Dr. Watkins is saying it's time to broaden the application of trauma-informed care. So, what's that? You don't know what trauma-informed care is? Well, lucky for you, we got the author themselves to come and talk to us about just that. Dr. Julian L. Watkins is a physician with the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene and the author of the article I was just pulling from. Y'all welcome Julian Watkins to Hey,
Hello,
Dr.
hello.
Watkins, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us on such short notice. You know, we found this midweek and here you are to discuss some trauma-informed care with us. As a physician, how do you define trauma-informed care and why is that the solution we need right now?
Trauma-informed care is an approach to healthcare. Trauma-informed practice is used in a few other fields of study and practice as well. But in healthcare, basically, it's a form of seeing folks and understanding that more often than not, people have experienced trauma in their lives. And understanding that trauma can have complex impacts on folks' lives and on their healthcare. When I talk about it in the context of the current moment, racism is a complex form of trauma that
Mm,
has a lot of long lasting impacts. And so, understanding that in context with the current crisis of this pandemic and the traumas that we're all witnessing all the time, we have a framework that people have used and have studied and have really been able to, figure out on many different levels that we can apply to the current moment to understand that as healthcare providers and practitioners and folks in institutions and governments, sometimes we've actually been the perpetrators of trauma to folks. And so when we
mm,
engage with communities, it's understanding that sometimes we have been the ones or folks who look like us or wore the white coats have performed this trauma. We were the perpetrators. And so when we engage with folks, we have to understand that. And when you understand that you or someone like you may have done that, you approach things differently and you talk to people differently and you engage differently. And it's about safety and more understanding when you engage with communities that have experienced things, almost unheard of things if it wasn't true.
mm, mm. So, you know, I've been talking to a lot of medical professionals around these vaccines. And, you know, one of the questions I like to ask just to kind of see where everybody's at, scale of 1 to 10, how much faith do you have in these vaccines?
I have a 10 out of 10 because I believe in science. I believe in the scientific method and understanding that science is, keep planes in the sky. We have scientific advancements that we have skyscrapers that touch the sky. We're able to go deep sea. We can break sound barriers and understanding that there's a history of science, even in medicine. And the vaccines that we see today are part of that long history and build on that knowledge. And human beings have used vaccines to get us out of other pandemics. We've been able to cure smallpox,
Mm,
which wiped out 90 to 95% of the indigenous population in colonial times. We've gotten a cure. We've basically gotten rid of polio. Polio basically only exists in the rural parts of Pakistan and Afghanistan. So I believe in the science. And I believe that this is like the next level of medical advancement. And I think that, as in the past, vaccines have gotten us out of really dark times, this current iterations will also be a really important tool to get us out as well.
mm. You said in this article And I quote, "For any hopes of a successful vaccine program, public health institutions will need to continually demonstrate their commitment to healing, empowerment, and collaboration as we together create pathways for recovery. A commitment to act in a right, proper, and effective way through policy and action." What does this look like to you?
I think it looks like us really understanding what all of these conversations around like equity, healthcare equity, what does it all look like? It's not just like a thing that you sprinkle on top of things. It's not like a certificate that you put on a wall. It's lived action. It's how you interact with people on a personal level. It's the policies that we create. It's the systems that we are working in and maintaining. And when we talk about, engaging with these communities and we talk to people, we engage with folks who've experienced unthinkable traumas for many generations, over 400 years in this country. And the way that we talk about this thing called hesitancy, we flatten the whole conversation, and we'll flatten an entire race of people. That yes, there is a particular ethnic group within Blackness, Black Americans who are descendants of enslaved and kidnapped Africans, but that the Black community is so big and so expansive in this country. It's linguistically diverse, culturally diverse, ethnically diverse. To try to flatten things down into like a small thing, it ignores so much of the rich conversation that's
Mhm.
happening. So we have to, like, to really do this, we have to see Black people, see these people of color for who they are and their whole selves, and stop flattening the conversation and really looking at it and not blaming folks for the hesitancy that they may have, which is actually an expression of a lack of confidence.
Mhm.
Nothing has shown us in the last 400 years that these systems and institutions have actually failed.
Mm. Absolutely.
I talk about the
Absolutely.
HIV crisis in the article, and people wouldn't even understand that fact. But I work in sexual health for the city of New York, and people don't understand that it's that dire in certain communities.
Mm.
And people have lived through that. People are living through that now. That number was from 2016 when they made that projection, right? Or you look
Wow.
at other crises, you look at the opiate crisis that had happened and ravaged communities in California, in New York. I live in New York City, in the Bronx, for example. That opiate crisis, the way that the nation and people talked about folks living in that crisis was very different than what we see now.
Mm.
And it goes on, mass incarceration. So it's understanding that these are lived traumas these communities have experienced, that some Black folks got here after Tuskegee, but they're living through some of these things. So it's understanding and seeing us for all of us, and addressing this as such.
And I loved that point in the article that was like, let's not just leave it at, it's a disservice to be like past traumas when we have an entire generation that is currently undergoing trauma right now. So before we get out of here, I got one question I like to ask every one of my guests that comes by this show, and that is, where is your joy coming from these days?
My joy, Black History Month, but it's Black history all the time. And it really just comes from engaging with these like Black artists, these like Black cultural figures from the past and present. And during the worst of the pandemic, like, it was dark in New York City. Like, we went through that first wave, it was dark. The city that never sleeps was brought to its knees.
Mm.
Everything was boarded up. And in that darkness, really turning to some of these like artists and musicians and people who were just making all of this beautiful work, they showed me that in the darkest of times, that love and beauty and like
Mm.
harmony can exist.
Mm.
And it really helped me to see that even in this time, that it can also exist. And then it also showed me like that I have a place in this too. And it
Mm.
helped me to find my own voice, and helped me to choose love and choose that as the guiding light in the work that I do. And I went from just working in a clinic working with folks to prevent STIs, to really thinking about what is going on in the world and seeing what is happening with this pandemic. And so I just find, a wellspring of joy from such a rich history of folks who have survived so much. And to say Black Lives Matter is just the bare minimum for me. We deserve the world because we've given the world so much beauty and so much grace, more than it has ever shown us. And so it comes from that. That's where I get my joy.
Yeah, I think 2021 we done with matter. I mean, like, Black lives inspire, Black lives enrich, Black lives cultivate, Black lives beautify. Like, we got a lot of verbs to find, y'all, that we could that matter is absolutely the minimum. So, man, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Watkins. We were talking a little pre-show that we are going to have you back. I got to peep some interviews, and just your take of how to inject love into the medical field is so beautiful to me and so inspiring. So we'll definitely have to have you on, and we'll go in depth about this, and who knows, maybe we'll get you on the joy hunt too.
Sure.
So we'll definitely be in touch, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Take care and good night.
Absolutely. Hey, you arguing in the comments section. Yeah, you. Check this out for a second. Look, I'm going to let you get back to it. Just hear me out. Now, we here at Masked Up keep an open mind and are always up for a lively debate in the various comment sections where we broadcast, because humans have debated philosophy, doctrine, medicine, and law since our very beginning. But there are rules, y'all. For instance, the fallacy of false equivalence is the comparison of two things because they share some characteristic similarities despite glaring differences, like when the media draws any comparison between anti-mask protesters and the racial justice actions around the world in the summer of 2020. Liberation and convenience are not equivalent, and therefore to call them equivalent would be false. Y'all see how this works? All right. Let me give you an example. This is the fallacy of false equivalence demonstrated famously for all of history.
Many Democrat politicians endorsed and encouraged the riots that destroyed vast swaths of American cities last summer. When violent left-wing anarchists conducted a sustained assault on a federal courthouse in Portland, Oregon, Speaker Pelosi did not call it an insurrection. Instead, she called the federal law enforcement officers protecting the building stormtroopers.
Y'all, it is the fake outrage for me. But Andrew, in both cases, protesters damaged federal buildings in an attempt to overthrow the government. How are they false equivalents? I'm glad you asked, random dude in the comment section. Two important things called nuance and context. Privilege is one of white supremacy's greatest weapons, and there has never been a bigger show of it than we all witnessed back in January. While BLM and friends spent the summer hosting thousands of actions around the country to protest a 400-year legacy of injustice, violence, and white supremacy, a small percentage of events bubbled over into small-scale property destruction or violence. Also, there is data proving that police were 5 times more likely to use force against BLM protests than any other kind of protest. On the other hand, the insurrection was a singular, concentrated effort with the explicit intention of threatening and harming our elected officials in hopes of illegally overturning losing election results and staging a coup to seize power. Do we see how these are different? The one was white people testing the bounds of their privilege and finding out just how far it goes, which, in case you missed it, is wild far. a lot farther than some of even us realized. So that's the fallacy of false equivalency. Don't be doing it in our comment section. It's a sneaky one that some of us use without even realizing it. All right. You can get back to it. Philosophy lesson over. And while we're talking about media and white supremacy's ability to creep into every facet of our daily life and how it must thusly be dismantled from the inside out, we might as well get into our next segment. Y'all, I got such a gift for you right now. It has been a minute since we got to sit down with an artist on this show, and Kamon Freeman is not your average artist. He's a poet, he's a filmmaker, he's a radio host, a festival organizer, and so much more. I got to sit down with him last week. We talked for over an hour and could have definitely gone another 2 hours, but I had a Zoom meeting to get to. You know what it is. But it was such an enlightening and enlivening conversation. I chopped up 15 minutes or so of it so y'all could be in on the conversation. From Sacramento to DC, here's a couple guerrilla poets talking community, media, and dismantling white supremacy at the intersection of art and health. Hey, Kamon Freeman, how you been? How's your quarantine been?
Hey man, I'm enjoying the revolution. How you doing?
Yo, same. So you are a poet. You're the founder of We Act Radio, award-winning playwright, feature film director, founding board member of Words, Beats, and Life, co-founder of Bum Rush the Boards, the largest youth chess tournament in Washington, D.C. My first question is, do you just walk around founding things all day?
I need to find some money. That's what I need. But I'm the co-founder of We Act Radio. You're making it sound like I already found some money. But yeah, I'm co-founder of We Act Radio. And more people need to collaborate. You know, more people need to collaborate. And I think that one of the things that I have done over the course of my career is undertake projects that force me to work with a large number of people. My first endeavor was a festival. We call it the Black Love Festival. It's a community awareness event disguised as a festival. Music, poetry, information. Obviously, had to work with a large number of people there. From that built relationships, and it was like kind of like a reconnaissance mission where I found out where resources were, where allies were, where the cracks in the systems were. You know, what you can get away with, because I'm dealing with the city, I'm dealing with the police, I'm dealing, so I got into these rooms, and it was an education. And now one of the things I try to convey to younger people as much as possible is that the system is not as infallible as you think it is. The system is not as efficient as you think it is. Beyond the criminal injustice system, they got that down to an efficiency. But in terms of every other aspect of the government, we should not be fearful to challenge it, because it needs to be changed. And I know where the cracks are, and we need to explore them. And I think that is becoming more abundantly clear. I spent the summer in Nairobi, and when I came back, I had complete confidence in my voice and what I had to say and where I was writing, because oftentimes the system would tell you that you are insignificant and there's nothing you can do, and we should utterly reject that. That is one of the tenements of white supremacy, is thinking that their ice is colder, their thing is better. That's the mainstream. Like we got to sanitize the language. We need to stop calling them the mainstream. Stop calling them lamestream or whatever you want to call them, but they ain't the mainstream. Most people I know, when I get in their car, they're not listening to the commercial radio. Most people, that's not what the vast majority of people I know is checking for. And the vast majority of people I know are not listening to Washington Post to formulate their opinion. So, things haven't changed, but no one's going to tell you that they have changed. We have to sense that. It's like a fight in the ring. You have to sense when your opponent has already tired, and the system is in the ring with Ali, and they was Big George Foreman and had everybody scared, and they've been beating our ass for a long time, but they're getting tired. You got to dig deep and find some resolve left, some resiliency, and we can overcome this brutal beast that's been terrorizing the planet for far too long.
Yeah, I've been talking to people along the same lines about the what I'm calling the death rattle of white supremacy. You're seeing this big reaction and this big wave of it, and this like almost like popularization of it, but it's because of that fact that like it's getting tired. The system is getting tired. They're getting beat out here and there. They're like. When I meet superheroes, I like to know the origin story. You know what I'm saying?
Always a story.
So from there, how does We Act Radio start? How do you start a whole media outlet conglomerate? How does this happen?
Yeah, this big beautiful empire, right? Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, our property is bought and paid for. The land it's sitting on is bought and paid for. We have a performance venue outside that holds hundreds of people, and we took all this, and we in like one of the we like in the poorest section of Washington D.C., but it's the section that's now for gentrification. So we got in right in time for us to be like what. So it's an institution, and this is our 10 years here. But how did it start? I want people to understand that everything is not linear. I never had a plan to create a festival. I never had a plan to become an artist or a poet or a filmmaker. What I had was the undying dedication to follow my instinct and do something that challenges the mountain of bullshit that we have been fed. Like I got tired of screaming at the TV.
The masked up live stream here is a community health live stream. So where do you see community health and art and media intersecting?
Well, health is wealth. First of all, so health was a part and parcel of everything I did. The festival that I alluded to was the largest annual AIDS mobilization in Washington, D.C. for 6 years. We tested more people for AIDS than any other calendar day than the Department of Health, okay? And that because we had all these mobile units out there, and D.C. at the time had 12 times the national AIDS infection rate. And it was a reason for that because, Congress runs D.C. D.C. is not a state yet. And so Congress decides what happens in D.C. So when we have our license plates that say taxation or representation, it's real. And so we was denied for 10 years to have a needle exchange program. And that was despite the fact that it had been proven that dirty needles was the cause of 30% of all new AIDS infection cases. And so that means for over 10 years, 30% of all new AIDS cases was attributed to the fact that we didn't have self-determination. So that's 300% higher than everybody else just because of that. And so that negatively affected our health. And then going into our platform here where We Act Radio, we're here for Medicare for all, healthcare for all. Because how can you sit here and push a vaccine when say we want to get this vaccine to everybody, as we like to say in DC, everybody. We want to get the vaccine to everybody because we're concerned about everybody's health, but we're not concerned about everybody's well-being other than this vaccine. You know what I'm saying? So if you got a pre-existing condition, you got some, you on your own. Good luck with that. So that's where we are right now. The system is about to implode because everything that we've been taught has now been obliterated in terms of invalidity. Everything that was politically impossible is now politically inevitable. Health is our wealth, and it has to be made a priority. It's the only country that does not provide health care to all its citizens, and that has to change. There's no rationale. Even in a pandemic, they still trying to hold on to it, but it's falling apart. Things fall apart, and I think that Martin Luther King said it best. Out of all the injustices, injustice in healthcare is the most inhumane.
So, everything that you do is kind of grounded in liberation work. What roles do art and media play in liberation work?
I think art is the fuel. I think art is what gets us going. There's a song that you can turn on that's going to get you out your seat. There's a painting that you can see that make you stop. There is some sculpture, some phrase of words put together that will make you think. Art is that. Art is we're the gatekeepers of truth. And that's Paul Robeson right there, one of my great heroes. But the media, I think the media is the platform. The media is the bullhorn. If I give you a bullhorn, you're now media, because you're now broadcasting. Anything that amplifies what you're saying is media. Your phone, record it, play it, that's media. I can sit here and whisper to somebody's ear and they whisper to 10 other people's ear, that's media. Now, I'm not gonna be responsible for what message comes out the last person's mouth. Right. That's how things get misconstrued, because that's not my voice. You went through several different levels of interpretation, but that's still media. That's more like Fox media, but it's still media. But we need to understand that, and it ain't over. It ain't over, and I think that this pandemic is making us have a renewed sense of what's important. And I think we're feeling that health is important, art is important, because you miss dancing, don't you? You miss going out, don't you? You mad that you didn't go to all those current concerts? You said it. You miss, right. Yeah, man. So I think art is the energy, and media is the platform.
Absolutely, and I think we're on the verge of another renaissance artistically. Like if you look at what happens after pandemics historically, the arts pick up. So I do feel, and you can feel the energy kind of coming from everywhere, whether it's the young poets, whether it's, I'm hearing rappers that are making far more, like rappers that used to make club joints, making some real conscious, real like spiritual music now. And you're starting to see, some folks actually find a way into that more mainstream. Toby's out here, man. Toby's out here making records right now. So what do you, from your perspective, what are the biggest threats to the health of the Black community? And have they changed with this new administration, or is it more of the same?
The biggest threat to the health of the Black community has been consistent for 500 years, and that threat is white supremacy. That is the biggest threat to the health of the Black community, and it's the biggest threat to the safety of this country, as you've seen in this desperation to maintain itself on the Capitol riots. And I want to say this: what do you call a failed coup? A rehearsal. So what you saw on January 6th is not the end, it's the beginning. So you're going to see more of that, but it's because white supremacy has been damaged. It's a wounded animal, and unfortunately, a wounded animal is far more dangerous than it normally is. But at the same time, it also signals it's on its way out.
This is the question that I ask everyone that comes on this show. I myself am an expert joy hunter. Where is your joy coming from currently?
Where's my joy? Wow. I guess I'm getting older, because if you had asked me that 20 years ago, I would have a completely different answer. My joy comes from watching my kid play. You know, if he's happy, then I'm happy. I remember a few days ago, I was sitting here reading, and I looked up, and because it was kind of quiet, I was expecting like to hear his computer on or something, and I go look, and I'm thinking he's gonna be sleeping. I was gonna turn the lights out. He's sitting there reading. I'm like, oh snap! I'm reading. He's reading. I felt warm and fuzzy, like I'm doing a good job as a father. Like, okay, all right. And I think that's what it is, because we breaking the chain, breaking the cycle. And I get joy from my work. I get joy when I see people get inspired by this work. I get joy when I see things changing. I get joy whenever I see random acts of kindness. Random acts of kindness. We should all practice that. I've seen more since this COVID, since the pandemic started. I've seen more.
Yo, thank you so much for taking the time with me today, and really just kind of gaming the listeners up on how white supremacy is a health crisis. That's something we really try and dig into on this show, and I think you really illuminated a lot of that for us. And thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you for all that you are, and we'll be following all the creation.
All right, and I just want to leave you with one jewel. This is from Martin Luther King. A lot of us are very familiar with Martin Luther King's last speech, but we may not be as familiar with his next to his last speech, which was delivered right here in Washington, D.C., March 31st, 1968, and it was called Remaining Awake During a Great Revolution. He went on to say, one of the great liabilities of life is that all too many people find themselves living amid a great period of social change, and yet they fail to develop the new attitudes and the new mental responses that the new situation demands. They end up sleeping through a revolution. Stay woke, y'all.
Salute.
Stay strong, stay woke.
Y'all, another big shout out to Kamon Freeman for joining us. And that is another one in the books. It has been a great Black History Month, celebrating not only Black History past, but Black History future, Black History present. As long as racism is a health crisis, we will be masked up, ready to address it head on. I am Andrew Defy. As per always, the Gorilla Poet Laureate, the Hoodie God, Spitting Quarantino, aka I wear my sunglasses at night indoors because my eyes are as sensitive as my heart is, y'all. For the whole team over here, for Netta, Avani, Suchita, Allison, and the rest of the masked up crew, from all of us to all of you, covered face, no case, you got to understand what health is to stay healthy. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, we're gonna leave you with a little special something that Netta found and wanted to leave y'all with. This is Bobby Kennedy and A Call for Peace, y'all. Stay safe, stay masked up. We'll see you next week.
Could you lower those signs, please? I have some very sad news for all of you, and that is that Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight in Memphis. Martin Luther King dedicated his life to love and to justice between fellow human beings. He died in the cause of that effort. In this difficult day, in this difficult time for the United States, it's perhaps well to ask what kind of a nation we are and what direction we want to move in. For those of you who are black, considering the evidence evidently is that there were white people who were responsible, you can be filled with bitterness and with hatred and a desire for revenge. We can move in that direction as a country, in greater polarization, black people amongst blacks and white amongst whites, filled with hatred toward one another. Or we can make an effort, as Martin Luther King did, to understand and to comprehend and replace that violence, that stain of bloodshed that is spread across our land, with an effort to understand compassion and love. For those of you who are black and are tempted to be filled with hatred and mistrust of the injustice of such an act against all white people, I would only say that I can also feel in my own heart the same kind of feeling. I had a member of my family killed, but he was killed by a white man. But we have to make an effort in the United States. We have to make an effort to understand, to get beyond or go beyond these rather difficult times. My favorite poem, my favorite poet was Aeschylus. And he once wrote, "Even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God." What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another, feeling of justice toward those who still suffer within our country, whether they be white or whether they be black.